Just inviting some people. Good evening, Minister Moore. Good evening, Apostle Husband. I thought I saw Tiffany. Good evening, Tiffany.
I saw Tiffany. Hmm.
Hello, Shanika. I'm gonna give them about 3 more minutes to come on,
Okay.
and then we're gonna get started. Good evening, Sharon. Hello, Felicia Kirby, BF. Hello, I don't know who this is. It's just a Facebook user, but hello, hello, and welcome. If you haven't already, if you can invite and share and let them know that Coco and Convos is on another Friday night. Good evening, Renita. Good evening. Starting about another minute. Just giving them time to come on.
Okay. I'm just sharing.
Yes. Yes. Great. Blessings, Mr. Caleb. Good to see you. If you haven't already, please invite and share. Let them know we're here. Okay. Thank you for the hearts and thumbs up. Hello, whoever this user is. I can't see your name, but hello, somebody saying, hey, y'all. I don't know who that is, but hello, because I can't see your name. So give StreamYard permission to use your names, and so then we'll know who it is. We can see the comments, but not the name.
Right.
So hello. All right, well, we're going to get started, and I do want to welcome you to another segment of Coco and Convos with Dr. Serena, and I am your host, of course, Dr. Serena Harris. And it is so good to see each and every one of your names. I'm going down the timeline, and it's so good to see you. And we thank God that you made a decision to spend a portion of your Friday evening with us on tonight. It is a privilege and it is a pleasure to be with you on tonight. We talk about some pertinent and relevant conversations and topics. Good evening, Mother Tatum. And so we just again welcome you. First, before we get started, I do want to mention our sponsors, and our first sponsor is Holy Temple UCI Church, located at 221 East 27th Street in Norfolk, Virginia, 23504, where the pastors are Dr. Linares and Dr. Serena Harris. And on tomorrow at the 2 o'clock p.m. hour, um, Dr. Serena Harris Ministries will be having an elevation/ordination service. So if you're not busy, come on out for that service and be a part. If you're not able to make it, please send your prayers during the elevation service. I will be stepping back into the ministry office gift of the apostle, and I will be licensing, ordaining Prophetess Jewel Jones in the ministry office gift of the pastor of Greater Faith Ministries. And so, hey, Shanika. And so we just thank God for that. So we're going to go ahead. We're not going to prolong the segment any longer. And I want to welcome our guest on tonight. Um, she also is a prophetess. This is one of my spiritual daughters. Um, and she has a story that she's going to tell in her own words on tonight, and I just encourage you to listen attentively um to what she is going to disclose on tonight, because what she's saying could also, hello, Alicia Lindsay, is that Apostle?
Yes.
Hello, Apostle. And what she says tonight could also be a help to somebody else, and that's what it's all about. We want to be able to be a help to somebody else. Listen, it is our wish or our objective that the hell we went through will be a help to somebody else. I hope y'all caught that on tonight. The hell that we've been through, if it could help somebody else from going through hell, then it's all well. And so we just thank God on tonight for her willing to share her story, being transparent on tonight. That's the only way you can get healed um, from a lot of issues, is to be transparent. Some people want to hide and no. If you want to be free, then you got to acknowledge that there is actually an issue going on. And so we just thank God for her on tonight. And so without further ado, I am going to introduce to some and present to others my spiritual daughter, Prophetess Luzella Reynolds, or AKA Lulu.
Well, hey everyone. I want to first thank Prophetess, well, tomorrow, Apostle Serena Harris for allowing me to join her show, which is a good show every Friday. I try to tune in when I'm not at work because, like she said, everybody has a story and everybody's story can heal. And so I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. It's much support.
So I want you in your own words to just tell us what you have going on right now. You can, it's best to start at the beginning so that people can kind of understand how we even got to the place that we are at now. So just start at the beginning in your own words of how things originated, and how they came to the place where they are now.
Okay. Well, starting from the beginning, the old lifestyle that I was trapped in was homosexuality. I dated females from my past hurt and pain, from not doing so well with my children's fathers. They say, watch what you wish for. And I was so hurt and broken because I had a bad experience with my youngest daughter father. And I'm like, Lord, I don't care if you send me a monkey, a dog, a male, a female, just send me some. I just wanted love. And so most of us, when we're searching for love, we open doors to different things when we just don't, allow God. When we don't wait on God, we open up doors to different things in our lives. And when we open up those doors and we're not spiritually mature, that's when we encounter things that we have to live with. We make certain choices that we get reprimanded in the spirit by it. So I have an older daughter who will be 18 this year, and my youngest daughter, she'll be 16 this year. And so when they were about 3 and 1, I had seeped into that lifestyle. And at first it was fun. It was something different. Nobody ever said, Lou, you're wrong. They just let me be me. And so while in the relationships and dealing with different women, I'm raising my children. I was going to hair school and working and taking care of my girls. And so I was just, going into that lifestyle with just an open heart. I really wasn't in a relationship with anybody that was, like predicated on trying to get married or anything like that. I was really curious at what that lifestyle was. And so as I lived the lifestyle, I enjoyed it. It was nothing really wrong with it to me at first until I started really stepping away from it. And that's when, when the devil see you backing up from his plan that he has for you, then he wants to knock you off your feet.
Right.
And I started to pull me by the neck. I still was going to church, but I wasn't in church to spiritually grow. I was going to church just to say I was going to church with my 2 young girls. And so then I had began, after about a year or so, I had began dating a woman who was 11 years older than me. I really didn't know much about being in lesbianism so deep. I didn't know like how they have like different like LGBT different things like that. I wasn't all in that deep. I was more so, like I said, in the closet. I was curious. And so when I started dating this older woman, that's when later we had moved in together. And so she had her 2 children and I had mine. And so, we was doing things, raising our children together. It really wasn't about sex because we were more at trying to do better things with our kids. And then with her being older than me, she was doing things like showing me better jobs and different things like that. So, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't, we never see it up front until you're really done with a person, how crucial it can be. We would take trips. I would go back home to my mom's house in DC. And at first, my mom and everybody like, you what? But like I said, they never said anything. They never said you was wrong. I was happy. My girls was happy. So it was fine. Well, after about the second year, we had started speaking on let's expand our family. Let's, have a child. And so we had went online and we seen how different people had did that. That's something that the LGBT, what they're really trending now is everybody wants to have a child together. And so once we had tried that, we had went to, we had ordered, sperm off the sperm bank. We had went to a place I tried to get professionally inseminated. It did not work. Me sleeping with a male was out of the question for her. So we had left it alone after we tried it the first time, spent a couple $1,000s, and so we left it at that. Well, after about the third year coming in, that's when things start depleting with our relationship. Her way of parenting wasn't the same way as mine. And I'm a firm believer as when you raise children as a whole and you have a certain amount of kids acting up, it's going to run off. It's going to, be on the rest of the kids. So I pretty much wanted to go my own separate way. I did. I moved out. And when I had moved out, it was March of 2011. An old friend from middle school, when I first moved to North Carolina, he had reached out, texting on Facebook or what so. And so we were just I was talking about the relationship I had just got out of. He was talking about the relationship with his son's mom. And so we were, chatting a bit. I got my own place and she had moved back in with her mom and her kids. And I was definite that I did not want to go down that road with her again. It was too costly, how it hurt me because I had poured in so much. Mm-hmm. I was a mother figure to her kids. I was going to the schools. Her kids' school and my kids, they were going to school together. We put them in the same private school together. So they seen more of me being an active mom. And I had just put in so much into the relationship. I didn't want to do it because I'm like, if I can go through all that and still be hurt, just like with a man, you know what I'm saying? There's no need for me to even be in such a serious relationship like that. We worked at the same hospital together. And I still had it in my mind, no, I'm free. I'd have been in a relationship 3.5 years. I was doing my own thing. I had started back dating another woman that I dealt with, and I was still, texting the young guy on the phone. Well, that year of 2011, August, which is my oldest daughter's birthday, I had plans on taking my kids to the beach. And she had got so many people in the hospital to ask, tell her to talk to me. I want to talk to her. Or I want to see if I can be back around the girls. I miss the girls. And she had been around since my kids was 1 and 3. So I'm like, no problem. You could be around the kids. But as far as me, no. And that was one of the worst mistakes that I can do was go back on my word. I had allowed her and her kids to come with me to the beach. And when I had went to the beach, I had already had been sexually active with the guy that I was on the phone with. And so when we came back from the beach, a couple of weeks later, the guy had called me. He told me, he said, Lulu, you're pregnant. And I'm like, no, you can't be serious. It's almost 5 years. And he said, no, this is the same way I was when my baby mama was pregnant with my son. He always referred to her as baby mama, never my son's mother, certain things like that. And so I said, okay, I'll go check it out. Thought nothing of it. Well, when I started eating pickles and ice cream, I knew it was real. Went to the doctor and they told me that I was pregnant. 5 years later, I'm pregnant. So when I had went to the beach with the girl and her kids and my father and stepmom, my father and stepmom they were pissed because they're like, okay, you did all this to get out of the relationship just to open back up the door and you're going to go through it again. And so when I had found out that I was pregnant with my son, and after we came from the beach, of course, she started back coming around, we're going out to eat, we're doing things like we were a couple again. And so I'm trying to jog in my mind, okay, I don't want her to think that I was dealing with this person while I had pulled her back in, but the damage, was already done. And so I had wrote it in my diary about the actual way how it happened, how I didn't want to tell her, but I had to tell her. And so it was either she accepted it or she didn't. This was nothing that we planned together. She didn't know him. I knew him. He used to have a crush on me in middle school. And so what had happened there was she accepted it, was happy, told all of Facebook, hey, we're having a baby. She decided to stay with me. And so I had my 2 kids, like I said, she had her 2 kids and everything was fine. Well, in the beginning of my pregnancy with my son, I was severely sick. I had hyperemesis really bad. I look at something wrong, I was throwing up. So the doctors, they wrote me out of work. And when I got put out of work, I didn't know if I was approved for short-term disability or long-term disability. So I was asking her, can I get some help on helping me pay my bills? Because remind you, I'm living in my own spot now. And so she would be like, no, ain't nobody tell you to go out and get pregnant by that white boy. I ain't gonna help you with no bills. And that was just very stunning to me, because if you accepted this, then this shouldn't be thrown back in my face. You know what I'm saying? And so I remember a day me and my stepsister and her had went out to eat at Fridays, and I had cried at the dinner table because she repeated the same thing. I will not help her pay no bills, because this is not something that me and her went in together on agreeing to do. And so I just prayed and I left it in the Lord's hands. And before you know it, I was approved for short-term and long-term disability. I mean, it paid all my bills. God came through. And so with me staying in that smaller apartment, I moved into a bigger apartment getting ready for my son. So with my son's father, at the time, he had got back with his son's mom when I had started back dating her. And so we were on the phone one day, me and him, I'm being transparent. And it was near Christmas time. And I was on the phone with him, and he said, well, yeah, I'm just waiting on my wife to get from school. She's at school right now. She had late night school. I said, oh, you got married? And I said, he said, no, I've been married. And I said, but you called her your baby mama, not your wife. Why were you reaching out to me since March? And we've been talking about all these different things. And that's one of the major things you left out. Had I known you were married, I never would have put myself in that predicament. And so I was so furious with him because, you could get sued for that. You could get in trouble for sleeping with somebody. So not alone sleeping with them, but being pregnant. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know if she had money. I didn't know what to do. So what I did was I had went back in the paperwork when me and the old partner, we were trying to have that baby the year before as far as sperm donor, because I'm like, if anything happens or she finds out, I don't want my son to be, my child, because at the time I didn't know what I was having. I don't want it to be that type of thing. So I told him, I said, I found some paperwork. I went to his dad's a preacher. I came to his dad's church. I'm like, hey, I need you to sign this paperwork. Therefore, you could still be around the child, but this is just for your safety with the child and my child's safety. So he signed the paperwork. Everything was fine. Fast forward, she still had never met the guy, never known the guy, never knew his name or anything. Well, I was about 8 months pregnant and I had to have a tooth removed. It was emergency. And when I was at the dentist, she saw him and he met her. So I introduced them to each other and she was kind of a little hot about it. But even though I was pregnant with my son, like my step-parents, like my stepmom and my dad had said, it was the same merry-go-round. It was no different from me not being pregnant. The relationship wasn't better. She was doing things outside the relationship. So I had already had it in my mind. It wasn't going to work. When I had my son, she was there in the delivery room. My son, she left. We weren't like a couple. From day one, even before I had my son, we were just always at each other's throats. And then when her children seen the bond that she was trying to have with my son, it was a lot of jealousy. It was a lot of animosity. And the good thing was we stayed in two separate places. So my children would go over there and play with her kids and so forth. And I just let it be. I was doing my own thing. I started back working in the hospital and everything was fine. Well, when we officially had broke up, I was in my apartment and I don't know if y'all have it up there in Virginia, Habitat for Humanity. I was waiting on a house to be built. I had got approved for that. And they didn't want you to be skipping around with your address to be approved to get a house. And so my lease was up and I asked her, can we come and stay with her for a while? And at this time, my son was like 9 months. We had never lived with her. And so I moved in when my son was 9 months. And by the time my son was 12 months, it was just not working. Her son had put my son in the freezer when he tried to walk. Her son had did a couple of things that was sexual to my children that I definitely did not agree with. So it just didn't work. So I had moved out and tried to start my life all over again. And this time I knew I was officially done. So she would go to my son's daycare and she would go see him and stuff like that. And I would tell her all the time, hey, wait, I need you to wait until we get on our feet before you make a move to continue to seeing my kids. She would go get my girls and different stuff. It wasn't just King alone. It was all of them. So after my son was about 1.5 years, I had got diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And Crohn's disease, of course, is an inflammatory disease where foods that you eat that helps your body grow, my body, it attacks it like it's bad. So one minute I can be blown up and have weight, the next minute I can be very small. What pulls it out of remission is worriness, is stress, high levels of stress, and it can make it active. So when I first got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, I didn't have no help or anything like that. And of course, majority of my family, they, stay in Virginia and DC and all up north. So the only one there to help with my kids was her. Hey, can I help you? So she would get my girls from the bus stop and get my son from school and drop them off at home. Well, when she found out that I started dating different people, it just got bad. She didn't like that. She started treating them different. She wouldn't pick them up. So I'm like, well, I just don't want the relationship. So fast forward to when my son was almost 2. I remember I started going to church with an old friend. We started going to church. At first, the church was in her home, and then we started going to church in the main church. And so I was rekindling a relationship with God. I was having a true relationship with God. I never had that before. Like I said, I just used to go to church and say I was going to church. And so God had opened me up to a lot of things that I had did in my life that, he wasn't too keen with, but he was willing to forgive me for. And so when I tried to start aligning my life up with the word, it was like actual life that I was living was just hell. It went from me having a nightmare. I had a nightmare that I had moved into a house and it was like this orb, the world was in the bathroom, and Zion, my youngest daughter, she went to put her hand through it and she flew out the bathroom. And then I heard this screaming, and it was my son, and it was a little girl pushing the merry-go-round. And the more she pushed the merry-go-round, and he had a hoodie on, the more it went around his neck. He suffocated and he took his last breath. So I screamed out of that dream. And I remember telling my pastor at that time, because I was so scared of the dream, I got down on my knees and I asked the Lord for forgiveness for living that way, opening up that door to my children, because what we do, it affects our kids.
Yeah.
We might not realize it at the time. I was young and I did not understand the demonic realm, the spiritual realm, but you do open up that door for your kids, for that door to be open to your children. So I remember getting on my knees and I asked the Lord to forgive me. I hadn't heard from my son's father, and I asked him to, open up a relationship between my son and his father. And so just as fast as I prayed, and I knew the Lord had forgiven me, because a month later, my son's father, he's like, oh, I thought y'all moved back to Washington, D.C. I want to meet my son. He's so beautiful. And so, I never told him no, it was his son. And he had told me that he was going through a divorce, and he wanted to build a relationship with his son. So I let him meet his son, and he wanted him to play baseball. His dad was baseball coach. So everything was going okay up until, she found out that he was seeing his dad. I was dragged on Facebook. I was talked about. She would put pictures up of his father on Facebook, like, this is the white man that, she slept with over me. I told y'all it wasn't really my son, blah, blah, blah. And so I never said nothing because I would always get inboxes from people who really knew me, like, be the bigger person, don't react. And so what I would do is I would get into a comfort with God more when I came to church. Like, this is just the obstacle I just got to overlook. I would go to my son's daycare, and she is taking shoes and Pampers there. And at one time, I stopped accepting because I'm like, if I stopped accepting, then she would leave me alone. Mm-hmm. And so afterwards, I didn't hear no more from her. And I was going to my son's school, and they had told me that he wasn't there. And so I'm like, well, what do you mean he's not there? They had allowed her to pick him up. So I took him out of that school and put him in another daycare. And he was only there for a short while before a lady called and said something about someone calling and asking, did my son go to school? So in fear, I took him out of that school and took him to the public Head Start. When I had enrolled him in the public Head Start, everything was fine. The first year, I felt free. I did not feel like no one was chasing me. Then all of a sudden, I was riding in the car with my pastor at the time, and my son said, Mommy, do you know a girl who dressed like a boy? She watches me on the playground at school. And he started to have a fear about going to school. And I'm like, okay, now this is a little bit too much. And so I went to the school, and I'm like, y'all trying to say that he has ADHD or he has all of this, but his emotions is kind of worked up now because now somebody is stalking not only me, but my children. And imagine how he feels. He's 3 or 4. And so I called her. I'm like, not only you, but are you and your girlfriend going to go to my son's school to see him without my permission? And she told me pretty much, she could do whatever she wanted to do. When I went to the school, they told me that they could not stop her from coming there because she had enrolled her grandchild. So her daughter had just turned 16. She had a baby young, and she had used the grandbaby every daycare he went to. The first one where I took him out of there because they said he wasn't there, she put her granddaughter there. Wait a year, when he went to preschool, when he was getting ready to graduate, she put her granddaughter there. And I'm like, how do you guys not see the stipulation here? So I let it go. He was getting ready to graduate. Well, the graduation, it was like everybody was peaceful and everything. And here she goes in the back. Hi, I'm here for you. And it was just so traumatizing for me because I'm like, when someone is done, they're done.
Right.
So fast forward from that, I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I let her see the kids, then she could kind of back off me. So my kids, it was both my daughters and my son. They went to some little water park thing that they had in Charlotte with her. And so she kind of eased off me. I didn't see her talking about me on Facebook or whatever. Well, she used my kids to find out if I was dating someone. I was dating this dancer. He went to church. We really wasn't even dating. We had just started talking, and we went to the movies. And someone at the movie seen me and called her and told her, because they knew him. He was an ex-boxer. And before the week was over, she had inboxed him saying, oh, we're just working out our relationship, this, that, and the third. So I couldn't even have a relationship because if she found out, she was reaching out to these people saying whatever. So I was living in these apartments and I was getting ready to move. I had just got a Section 8 voucher, trying to get on my feet because with Crohn's disease, I had to wait 2 years to get disability. My health was fluctuating up and down. And I was getting ready to move out, and not the landlord, but the people that work in the office, she said, hey, your mother called today and she needed a copy of your son's birth certificate because she said that you always losing things. And I said, my mother? I said, my mother stays in Washington, D.C. She don't know the name of the apartments I live at, but my mother could have called me. So I called my mama, and my mother said, why would I do something like that? And so I had figured out then it was her. I don't know why. I didn't know why she was calling asking for his birth certificate. And at this time, Caleb was actively going over his father's house. His father would pick him up for family functions and birthday parties and stuff like that. Like I said, if their fathers wanted to get them, I'm not a petty mom. I would let them go, long as my kids was well taken care of, you know. So before I had moved out of that apartment, it was Thanksgiving of 2016. I received the knock at the door. And hold on, let me back it up. The church that I was close to, I was really close. I was going to this church. And so one specific day, I had found out that she, in fact, went to the church, to the pastor's house. And this is something I cried to God about. This is something I related to the church about. And so she had used them as a pawn to get to me. She's so hurt I won't let her around my kids no more. And I'm like, it was always never about the kids. You know, let me be free. And before you know it, I stopped going to the ministry because I was like, nobody discussed this with me, knowing how much I go through with this situation. So I left the ministry, and she and her girlfriend and her kids began to go to the ministry. It never church going people. And so I kind of found that really odd for her to turn around and then talk about the pastor like a dog. And I'm like, you didn't even know these people. It's just was crazy. So like I said, fast forward to Thanksgiving of 2016, I received a knock at the door the week of Thanksgiving, and it was the sheriff, and she wanted joint custody of my son. He told me that a person could take you to court for pulling stuff out the ground in your yard or something, just something petty. So, because I'm like, okay, this is not her kid. You know, and at the time, me and his father were having differences because at first, before he had a girlfriend, you know, he wanted to be in his life and was picking him up and different things. And so things had started to change between how he was getting Caleb and so forth. So I'm like, well, you know, not to make your girlfriend mad, you just pay your little child support, pick him up, and we do it like that. Well, he found a problem with child support. And I didn't know that it agitated him that bad. And so, we weren't really talking at the time. We hadn't really had too much words with each other. So when I went to court with her the first time, I had told the judge, because when me and her dated the 3.5 years, anytime she would get in trouble, she would hit up the judge. She would call her, go by her house, and if she had a traffic ticket or whatever, she would put it in her mailbox. And she wouldn't have to show up in court. She would just throw it away. She would look out for her. So, when I went to the calendar call, I told the judge, I want to be in front of another judge because you guys know each other, and, you know, that's conflict of interest and stuff. She said in front of the whole courtroom, I don't know her. And so I said, yes, you do. She still put it on her docket. So when I went to court the first time, she had, it was like a legal aid lawyer. And so while I was there, I guess to kind of throw me off a little bit, she had told her, hey, look, this is this woman's child. I can't force her to give you her son, you know, this, that. And his father was subpoenaed to go to court. He didn't say anything in court. And, you know, I won. It was okay. So I left out of there. I said, ooh, weight lifted. I can move on with my life. 30 days later, I was back in court. They wanted to modify the custody order, and that I had it's an ex parte order, basically saying that I had my children in a family-like environment. But see, in North Carolina, you have to be living with someone 9 consecutive months in order for that to be ex parte. You know, you have to be with somebody, you know, like from birth until, you know, and so we had only lived with her from the time my son was 9 months till he was 12.5 months. That's not 9 months to call it a family, you know, domain. And so I was confused. So when we came back to court in 30 days, she didn't have the same legal aid lawyer. She had the judge's best friend for her lawyer.
Oh, wow.
And it was a field day in court. We went to court for several months, and I had the first lawyer I had, I'm paying him. When I got to court, and he was speaking for me, he was really nailing it in her. He was basically saying, hey, look, I could see that we're all here because you can't get over the relationship with her. It's not about the children. And so once the lawyer had said that, the judge had called him by a pet name. The lawyer had a regular name, but she called him by a nickname, like, hey, chill out. And so me and my dad looked at each other, and before you know it, they gave her joint custody. They locked my father up because my dad stood up, took off his hat, and he said, that's not legal. They just took my 5-year-old at the time in the back and asked him, did he want her to, because he was subpoenaed to court. They asked my 5-year-old, did he want the woman to take him to McDonald's to get him a Happy Meal? He said, no, my mommy would take me. Let me bring you up to speed on that. At this time, I was ordained a prophetess. I was ordained a pastor. We was holding church, the branch in North Carolina. And in this fight with trying to, be upright with God and still, fight for my son, it was heartbreaking. I couldn't do the two, because all I would worry about is how my kids was going to be so broken up. I kind of let ministry down to the side. I began back smoking cigarettes. I began back drinking alcohol because I could not understand for the life of me how someone who did not have no biological relation, no same last name, we were never married, could go in and just can do something so hurtful. So when the judge had gave her joint custody, she had gave her more days than me. My son was taken from me when his 5th Christmas. Now, remind you, I was waiting on disability, so that was 2 years. Me and my kids had lived off faith alone. And so I had finally got back the back pay, but that was all gone to lawyers fighting for what was rightfully mine. And the little bit I did have, I wanted them to have the best Christmas. I had just got moved into our first home, and, we were doing all right. I really didn't think that was going to come about because I just, it's illegal.
Right. That part.
When that happened, when they took him, I'm really still stuck at him being 5. Now he'll be 11 on Tuesday, and it was the fear of dropping my kid because they had never investigated the home. They had never investigated them who lived in the home, nothing. And when I say I was stuck at 5 years old, it's because they made me give him up the day before Christmas. So that was so painful. Like I had to literally walk my little 5-year-old to people he didn't even know. He knew him from the past, going out with his siblings and stuff, but not to live.
Right.
And so I remember her sister saying, oh, well, since it's Christmas and, this is new, we'll just let them, come over here for a few hours. And what the judge had wrote was that she'd get them Christmas Eve into Christmas Day, and I wouldn't get them to 6 o'clock. How can you take a child from their mom on the Christmas, like that? And so I'm gonna be honest with you. I tried to take because like I said, I have Crohn's disease, so I would have pain medications. I did not want to be sane. I wanted to be there because I still had my girls, but that just killed me because I'm like, how can this be possible?
Right.
So they didn't let him just stay on no Christmas. They kept him to the day of Christmas at 6 o'clock. And when I finally got him, because they were being so evil with it, they had bought him so much stuff to whereas when he came home, and remind you, I'm just got the little bit of back pay left from paying all the lawyers. He said, "This is all." And it was just so heartbreaking because I'm like, now I have a competition, and I've always been mom. They've always had the best. And so after that, after Christmas, I kind of got along through that. They switched it to the schedule of she would have him Monday through Wednesday. I would have him Wednesday afternoon through Friday morning to take him to school. And she would have him Friday afternoon through the next Wednesday when I would get him again. Phone calls, no. It was bad. That next Mother's Day, around Mother's Day, I received a letter in the mail. They took his dad's name off his birth certificate, put hers. I never went to court for nothing like that. So by now, I was just existing. I wasn't living. I was doing what I could do, but just like an animal, when you take a animal's cubs, they're losing it. I felt like I was so standoffish with God, and my punishment was there. I started working at the sweepstakes where they do nothing but just, gamble and different stuff like that. And it was just like other people there at these places, they had problems too with gambling, trying to get over what they had mentally. So it was just like I kind of fit in, but I still would always open up and talk about God and different things like that. But I just couldn't understand why he wasn't moving in my situation. I didn't understand how I had just turned and tried to live for God, how the devil just could come. But I wasn't really fluent in the Bible to know that when you start living for God, the same stripes that Jesus had took, we have to go through them, and I didn't understand that at the time. I gave up, I let go. My oldest daughter at the time, because King was 6, she was 13. I had got called from work. She was on live. She had slit her wrist because she had lost a friend. A friend had got killed, and then her brother wasn't in the home. So it only not affected me, but it affected my girls as well. And so I want to say like 2 years after he was starting, the second year he was just being beat. They said that he was having a bad problem or anger problem. But if I come to your house and you had a dog, the dog will be all right first couple months. I'm giving it all it wants, treats and everything. But a little while later, the dog is going to miss, its owner. It's going to miss you. It's going to wonder why I can't be home. And so, and might I add, the judge from the first incident, they told him that they told me he couldn't be around his father. When they took his dad's name off his birth certificate, they stated that they did not want him to be around his dad at all, under no circumstances. So I was just like, and what made his dad walk out of the courtroom where he really didn't have a voice, because they asked him, they said, well, did she pay you, or did you get any paperwork from the woman to impregnate? Because that's what she was leading the judge to believe. And so he said, no, I've known her since middle school. I didn't get no paperwork from her. I didn't meet her until she went to the dentist, And so what made him, fire blaze in the courtroom when we went the first time is because they made me read from my diary when I got pregnant with my son and the experience. And I had talked about, it wasn't nothing too bad. Hey, just keeping it real. It was quick, slam, bam, thank you, ma'am, I'm pregnant. And he was hot, and he walked out the courts. And so he didn't reach out. He blocked us. He felt I had something to do with it. By the time I went to child support court with him for the little $50, she was in court with him. So he didn't have a voice. And I was just like, okay, this is crazy. I went to church, and I asked for more time with him one time because one of my friends was preaching her first sermon, and she told me no. Found the church, ran in there, gold teeth, pants sagging, snatched my son right out of church in front of all the people. I was so embarrassed. Um, and remind you, the same year that I left and moved out, she had got a girlfriend, been living there and still lives there. And that's who I would communicate with because she was never home with my son. Right after she had got my son, a year later, she had got the girlfriend's 4 grandchildren because their mother had passed away. So not only did she have my child, but she had 4 other smaller kids. And remind you, she's 11 years older than me. Her children now are in their 20s. And she has a house full of children that don't belong to her. And so I'm like, okay. So I had a woman come and live in my house. So to be so nosy, she had the people from court, like a guardian ad litem,
Uh-huh.
to question family members, friends. Was I dating this woman? What was this woman doing in my house? All kinds of things. Took me back to court for full custody. So I'm like, okay, now this is being a little bit greedy. But before we came back to court for full custody, I had already had told the people, my son, you remember King used to wear long hair.
Uh-huh.
I had to cut his hair down to the scalp because one day he came home and he was just constantly itching. And he had lice just crawling in and out of his scalp that about the size of a fingernail, pinky fingernail. They were so huge. And I cut his hair down to it was so bad. He started saying things like he wanted to kill himself because she was having her friend uh, spank him. Every time he would get in trouble, he would always come home with whips. He would come home with belt buckle marks. And I was telling DSS, like the courts wouldn't help me. Can y'all do something about it? And I remember the guy from DSS, he said, I don't want to lose my job. He said, but I know someone who can help you. And he slid me the lady's phone number. And I sat and told her my story, and she didn't get nowhere. So when she took me to court for full custody, I paid these lawyers like $4,000 up front. They was assuring me that they would be able to look into the case deeply because how I got into it and how it was turned over, it was no reason for it. Even down to the father's name being taken off the birth certificate. They even told me that his father was just like another entity, so he could be around them, be around his dad, but his dad still didn't buy the story because by then she had called the dad so much and talked to the dad so much that he really wasn't communicating with me like that. And I'm like, we're the parents, we're the parents. And how are you listening to her? You don't know her. When I went back for full custody, I was paying the lawyers. Like I said, I was working the sweepstakes. And so in the gambling halls, you make a lot of money. I'm paying them like $2,000 a month.
Uh.
A lot of money. They had a binder of police reports from her home about that thick. Drugs, bath salts, guns, banana clips, all kinds of stuff, fights, anything you can name. But because my daughter, my oldest daughter at the time, teens, they get out with friends and they do this, because she had a video from when she was like 14, 15 years old, 2 years prior that me and her dad had already put our foot in her butt of smoking marijuana. They wanted to say that was the reason why they wanted my son out the home. And I said, first of all, she don't do that in my home. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is wrong. So I had to fight that. And when I tell you all of that was against me just having a couple of traffic tickets. I didn't have nothing else but just a couple traffic tickets. So my lawyers, they was talking to me all the time. And because of COVID, it prolonged the court. So I'm paying all of this money for 2 years. Well, the judge, and let me also state this, the judge, the same judge who ordered this, who had worked it out for her, She was disbarred the year my son was born in 2012. She was disbarred for 18 months for working out things for family and friends and church members, throwing their tickets out. She was barred. So when they let her come in, I'm writing the justice, I'm writing the people that you're supposed to complain to, like, hey, this is the problem. And every time the same person would always call me. I felt that was weird. Different people I tried to reach out to, NAACP or whatever, never said anything. So when I went to court the second time, my lawyers towards the end was saying that she was going to be not the judge anymore, and so we could possibly have favor. And they told me, well, the paralegal had told me that she had invited them to her retirement party. And I don't know why, but that just really scared me, because I'm like, if this lady invited my lawyers, and she know that they're my lawyers, to her retirement party, something's not up with that. Do you know that out of the blue, my lawyers, they didn't want to be my lawyers no more. I had invested all that money. I had me and my daddy thousands of dollars, and they resigned themselves as my lawyer because I still wanted them to take this to court. Like, what's the problem? So I couldn't understand why I didn't have a lawyer. And as soon as my lawyers renounced themselves, that's when they took me to court. I couldn't get in court for 2 years. And all of a sudden, when my lawyers moved out of the way, her lawyer took me to court. When I got the court papers, they were telling me, you have such and such amount of days to get you another lawyer or whatever. The date that they gave me for court was the wrong date. So I was thinking I had court late August, and it was the second week in August. So when the clerk had called me that afternoon, I had 2 hours to get ready for court. I had just started this new ministry. I didn't know what to do. I needed prayer. I wasn't there because I'm like, this is for full custody of my child. No lawyer, no representation. When I tell you, when I got in the courtroom, it was a nightmare. Come to find out, she had taken my phone that my son used to always, I had 2 phones, and she had taken my cell phone and went through it when my son would bring it over there. And she allowed the guardian ad litem to go through my phone. All of this, you're supposed to have my permission.
Right.
And it was just terrible, how they put a lot against me, saying that I needed a psychiatric evaluation. I'm like, I don't need a psychiatric evaluation. I've been running from this lady for years, trying to get me and my children's lives together. And here it is, y'all want to bring me in for full custody. They were saying that his grades, B's and C's at the time, was because he had missed 18 calendar days from school. Well, I didn't catch on. With King only coming with me 2 days one week and 3 days another week, he would always play hooky on a Friday to stay out of school to spend more time with me. I didn't catch on to it later. So when I told the judge what my son was doing, they made it seem like I was just allowing that. But I'm like, you're missing the point. He's missing me as his mom. He's not able to talk to me. He's not able to tell me anything. He got to a point he wouldn't tell me about his beatings anymore when they would beat him and different stuff like that. So I was just talking to anybody and everybody. No, I didn't have no help. And before you know it, that same day, instead of allowing me to have a lawyer, they had gave her joint custody of my son. I mean, not joint, they had gave her full custody of my son. I only get my son one night every other weekend and talk to him 15 minutes Tuesdays and Thursdays. And still with all of this, like in the first year when they took him, I seen him have a change, because King has been a kingdom child all his life. He's always praised God all his life. He loves him some God. The first year he kind of changed. He started trying to sag his pants and play with guns and different things like that. But then it turned around, and before you know it, he got back in God, because that was my prayer. Like, Lord, don't lose him in the midst of this. like I said, I was just living, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, something's got to come out of this. And with every word, every prophecy, it was always like, God's going to do. And God, at one point, I got to a point, when is God going to do? You know,
Yeah.
because I couldn't stand seeing my son in that situation, especially as a mom, and they're hurt and you can't do nothing about it. You know what I'm saying? And so then when they had given him to her last August, it was in a time where, you know, we're still in COVID. Everybody's losing their houses who had vouchers. So not only did I lose my son, but me and my kids had to move in with my dad for a period of time because we couldn't find a house because housing had went up. It was very depressing. More days I didn't want to live versus living. But what gave me the extra push to keep going is because I had my girls. I got back right with my relationship with God. I started going to church. Even when I wasn't doing right, I just was wondering, like, you know, God, is you gonna step down and give me a hug? Just a hug. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna be all right. And nothing just never happened. I couldn't understand for the life of me why even when they gave her the full custody, and now he's only missed 2 days of school and he has C's, D's, and F's, like bad grades now. And he doesn't even touch me to go to school. And I'm like, it's because his mind ain't there. You know, he's going, but he wants to go home. When he would come on the weekend, you know, and I would get the time with him, it would be so hard to take him back because it's like now I have to answer to somebody who wasn't even really a parent to their own kids, you know. And I never would have thought I could be able to, I would experience nothing like that. I've helped out so many friends and, you know, family members with their children. I just never would have thought that a situation like that would be allowed and I'm supposed to just live with it. And it's just horrible. It's crushing. He cries. So when he does come, you know, because one night every other weekend is really only 2 days a month to have with something that you birth. You know, I don't even know the teacher's name. He's just went through bullying, you know, and with bullying, you know, my response was, you know, hey, you know, well, let's work on getting him into a school that better fits him. You know, he loves the Christian denomination. He loves doing stuff for the kingdom. Let's get him in the Christian school. Oh, that's too much for me. I'm gonna put him in boxing. He's not a fighter. He's never been a fighter. And it just crushed me so bad because when I had called and he got on punishment, and that's the thing, if she's not into a relationship with someone where she's happy, then the anger is being taken out on him. You know, I can't talk to him, or she's upset with me. Oh, he doesn't have his phone, and I'm like, why would you sign him up for boxing? He's not a fighter. Oh yeah, that's why he doesn't have his phone, because he didn't go in there and fight. He's not a fighter. And she had called him out his name, a B. And I hit the roof, but I was so angry within because I'm like, as a mom, I can't even protect my son. What am I to do? Not only did it really, you know, dispel my other 2 children, you know, if Jamine had a rough anger patch, my oldest daughter, you know, she was fighting and doing this and that. But imagine you going to school, you always making good grades, and then all of a sudden your brother being taken out of the home. Your children are going to react. The more I told the judicial system about the problem, the more I reached out to NAACP. When I moved to this new city, my lawyer told me I'm pretty much blacklisted because I had got pulled over for something as small as a sticker, and the cops went to pull me out of the car and put me in handcuffs. No reason, did not get license, registration, or anything. And when I say brutally beat my oldest daughter so bad. locked all of us up, and remind you, I said I only had traffic tickets. So it is to build a case against me to show that I have something in the system. And we just been trying to keep our heads above water. It's been a long road. And, I try every day, but what mom can forget their child? And I look at it like we all always talk about Jesus, but what about Mary?
Mm.
And I put myself, I think about that often when I think about my son. Like, ain't no way nobody's gonna tell me that she was okay, sitting there watching your child get beat, dragged, stoned. That is you got to be a strong soldier in the Lord for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I pray and I keep the faith, because outside of all of it, it's like once I got into that situation with my son, I had nobody to call on. I didn't want to call on nobody. I get to the point I don't want to talk on the phone, because who wants to keep hearing that and nothing's changed?
Yeah.
So the good thing that I did have done in the past few months is stay in school, because that's allowed me to be grounded. I've lost thousands on thousands of dollars fighting for what's mine. And, I don't wish no harm or no bad, but I can't get that time back that I've lost with my child. I was always the mom, because I wasn't raised by my mom. I was raised by my dad, but my children have always had the best, you know what I'm saying? School pictures, baby pictures. And so when that happened and that gap came, I don't even know how to get back. You know what I'm saying? It's just like moving forward, but what do I do with the time? Your last child, you can't have no more babies. My tube's tied. You know what I'm saying? Not that I strike out to be one, but you can't replace what's taken from you, and especially out of anger. It was a lot of threats, before this had came about. I'm gonna hurt her like she hurt me, but homosexuality wasn't my stopping point. It was just a point of something that I had got in. And, I had stayed there a while, but I got back out of, that was my choice. And so it's just like, I tell anybody, I kind of let people have their way, but hey, be real careful dealing with that type of spirit, because, it'll turn around and haunt you. And you could lose things, your whole being, getting on the right path with God. The worst thing that I ever did was kind of like pretty much give up, because when I was like out of sight and out of mind, my dad would say, "Why you always sleep all the time?" And I would just sit and look at him like, even though it's your grandson, even though it's my son, you just don't know how can you move on? It's not easy.
Yeah.
If I didn't respond, then what kind of mother would I be? So after the custody situation was over, now remind you, for them to take a child out of the home and for you to be labeled a bad parent, wouldn't they take all the children? It was just him. But I had to look at my dad, and he was getting so frustrated, because you only get 30 days to appeal. And one thing I had to tell my dad, I'm like, we got to let God fight this. Because anytime when you are in a situation where it is way more than you can afford, they were talking $40,000 to appeal my case. I will be fighting tooth and nail for life. I couldn't, you know what I'm saying? It's not like I didn't want to. I wanted to rob a bank to get, my baby back. I didn't want to show them that I stopped fighting, but I had to learn how to fight in the spirit, because this ain't a natural fight. my doctor, because like I said, I get treatments for me having Crohn's. So both times when I had the Crohn's flare, when it went back active, was both times when I went to court with my son, because high levels of stress, it makes you sick. And so, yeah, I went to my doctor's one day, and she told me, because she knew about my son's story, and she said, "Do you know that this is not a natural fight, but a fight, a spirit fight?" And I'm like, here, this Chinese lady who probably don't know nothing about the gospel, telling me something. And so those things just push me right back into God. When you have nothing else, God, He's still gonna be there. Even though I had put him, out of the way because I felt like I was too. I'm like, Lord, I gotta smoke a cigarette. I have to, because I couldn't be sane. That's too much on the brain. And to be able to endure, and you have people who have known you all your life know that this is not your character to, you know, talk about you just like the others. It kind of pushes you in a cage where you're left like, what am I to do? That's why I tell people all the time, never shun the bums on the street, because you don't know what they went through for them to be out there. Just pray for them. Pray that God, you know, pray that God brings them back in. So now my fight is in the spirit. I fight with the word of God. When I get my son, he loves church. He loves everything about church. I just try to make sure I have him the sharpest suit I can buy and take him to church, because what else, can I do? And it's so heartbreaking, because it's still people who really don't know my story or know the real true story. And I'm like, the story is too long for me to sit here and try to explain it to you. You know what I'm saying? But there's no greater love than Jesus. Just let him do the work. And that's what I had to tell my dad. Like, let's take our hands off of it and watch what the Lord do. And that's where I am.
Listen, I first of all, I appreciate you um telling your story, and I'm praying that somebody knows somebody, some type of lawyer that's not in it to take advantage of the situation, somebody that can be a help to you. I'm talking about in the natural. And I know I'm speaking for everyone that's watching on tonight. We, as a body of Christ, we're gonna let the lawyers and them do what they do, but we're gonna do what we do, and that is pray. That is bombard heaven. My Bible tells me that one can chase 1,000 and two can chase 10,000, and it's more than two on this live. And I just believe everybody um, making their requests known and interceding on your behalf, that God will turn this thing around. I can't say why it happened and so forth. So what has happened has happened. There's nothing we can do about what has happened. But as long as you live and you got a chance. And I believe that we are to always pray until you see the result of what you're praying for. So we're going to continue to pray with you. We know that you're still praying. I know you, so I know you're a praying mom. And eh, I'm speaking for everybody on this live again. We're going to be praying for you and your family and your girls. Your girls, they got your back. They love you, and we thank God, for you, for your strength. And we know King been a little prophet since he was a little tiny something, and it's always the enemy's plan was to get him away um from it was his plot. The enemy has a plot, but God has a plan,
Right.
and God's gonna get the glory out of this whole situation. Going to get the glory out of this whole situation. And I'm just believing God. That's just where I am. I just believe that He's going to do it. Even it doesn't. It looks impossible because we know that there is wickedness at play here. There's no way you could just take a child from their mom you're you have no relational um connection to this child at all, and you could just come in and take somebody's child. No, 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 no. But but we walk by faith and not by sight. And so we're gonna bombard heaven on your behalf, and we're gonna believe God. We're not just gonna pray and not believe, but we're gonna pray in faith that God gonna turn this thing around. I don't know how He gonna do it, but listen, I'm just thanking Him in advance for doing it. I just believe he's gonna do it, and He knows that we know that He is the author and finisher of our faith. He is the one
Thank you.
that can fight the battle better um, than anything that we could ever do. And so I do thank you for sharing your story. I knew some of it. It broke my heart and it made me mad. And I was trying to stay here as calm because I just wanted to scream, just really go crazy, because of the injustice that was done. This whole thing was just wrong. It was just injustice all the way around. It was a revenge plot. It wasn't even about your child. It was about you. All this was to hurt you because of who you are. Of who you are. And so God didn't allow you to break, though it felt like you was going to. He still kept you, and He kept you for a purpose. I know, some of the things that happened, as a result of that, but you found your way back, to the Lord, and He was there waiting with open arms for you, to return. Like, daughter, I've been here all the time waiting, and I see a difference in your demeanor, in your spirit. I told him when we came to North Carolina, I'm like, I feel her spirit and how you have even grown. You've actually grown in the realm of the spirit as well, and so I'm encouraged on tonight. I really am, and I thank you for sharing. You never know who may be listening, and I'm just asking anybody that know anybody that could be a help. Please reach out. You can call me at 757-343-6754. You can inbox me, Serena Harris. You can inbox. What's your name on Facebook, Lulu?
Lucy Reynolds.
Lucy Reynolds. Inbox us. Um, if you know anybody that could possibly, be a help to her for this case, let the story be shared, let it be told, repeated to somebody, because we want the injustice that was done to be reversed. And I'm just believing God, and I believe that with prayer, faith without works is dead. So we're gonna do our part by having the faith and having the prayer, while also doing, the works that is necessary to get the ball rolling. And so, thank you so much for sharing. I tell you, I thank God for you. I thank God for you. Still beautiful, looking good, and everything. And King, he missed a beat because he don't play about his God. He
No,
don't
he
play
don't.
God, not like he missed a beat. And so I just want to say to you, thank you again so much, daughter, for coming on and sharing with us on today. I look forward to seeing you. That's right. Oh, Nay up here. And
Yeah.
his sister Nay Reynolds, she's the oldest out the clan. That's right. Justice for King. Let's bring King home. That's right. We're gonna continue to pray. We're gonna continue to pray again until we see the results of what we're praying for. We're not gonna stop praying. We're gonna keep on praying. And asking God, and thanking God. Thank you, Holy Ghost. And thanking God for doing it. And thanking God for doing it. All right. Well, this has been another Coco and Convos with me, Dr. Serena, and with Prophetess Luzilla. Yes, the shirt and the cup. I had to calm down because I was really, really mad. But I had to contact me. I'm on camera. I got to calm down because I was just really, really mad. Something about bullies, you know, this whole situation and injustice. It just really got to me. But thank you again. Listen, I'm sorry, y'all. We're not going to be on next week. I'm going to be out of town. I have a ministry assignment next week in North Carolina. I'll be there. And so we will return on the 26th at 7 o'clock. Thank you so much for tuning in. Is there anything you want to say? Going to final remarks or anything? Lulu, anything you want to say?
Well, I thank the Holy Ghost for being here because I was praying all day. I'm like, okay, Lord, it's a touchy topic. I don't want to be in front of everybody crying and snotting,
Okay.
but it
Okay.
was
It's
it was
okay.
very good. It heals a part of you when you know how much you're healing when you can tell it and get so far in your story and not. But before, man, I start off in the beginning and just be crying. But I just know that, you know, God is going to, I believe that God is going to work everything out. I just got to keep the faith and just not waver.
Yes. And you're not keeping the faith alone. We're gonna hold your arms up, and we're gonna anytime you feel like your faith dwindling or anything, then we're gonna give you some of our faith. We're not gonna let it dwindle. And so we just thank God again for everything. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for
Thank y'all.
attentively and hearing this story. And I thank you all for your prayers in advance for justice for King. All right, I love you all. Be blessed, and I will
Love
see you
you.
on the 26th. Keep us in prayer. Keep us in prayer about tomorrow. Y'all keep us in prayer for tomorrow. Amen. And we'll see you next time. This has been another episode of Coco and Combos.
All
Love you
right.
all. Good
Love
night.
you.